a technical issue that's able to be resolved at the top of the next hour.
Let's get through this round. Let's get through this round, and then we'll figure it out, and hopefully we have it figured out. So, Mr. Kurik, you have 6 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the witnesses joining us here today. And although I know sometimes politicians and journalists have what can be an adversarial relationship, acknowledge fully how important this conversation is in terms of accountability. Now, I will start, Mr. Chair, by asking the same question that I've asked all of our witnesses, and that is just two very, very simple questions to provide some context about how important this discussion is, and I'll go around the room both in person and virtually. But before I do that, just to invite members of this committee, because time is, of course, a precious resource, please feel free to send further information if you don't have a chance to get it all in front of us here today. My first question is, when it comes to the access to information system, having one that works, having one that is effective, having one that gives Canadians the information that they need from their government, is that essential to a modern and functioning democracy? I'll start with Mr. Beeby.
The short answer is yes. You can't have a functioning democracy without some kind of freedom of information system.
Okay. Thank you. And Mr. Conte.
I guess it depends how you define a functioning democracy, but which I don't know if I've seen in my lifetime. But in theory, yes.
Okay. Okay. And Mr. Jolly. Oh, you're on mute, Mr. Jolly.
Hello, this is Stanley Tromp. Can you hear me? Is my microphone working?
Yes, Mr. Tromp. I'm just gonna keep you on mute. I'm going to stop the time here. But sir, we were having technical difficulties with your connection. I'm going to keep you on mute until we get through this round, and then I'm going to invite you to speak to the committee. Okay, sir? Because and I don't see you either. That's the other problem. So I just heard you, but I can't see you. So we are going to, we're just going to put you on mute for a bit until we can resolve this technical issue, but we're going to continue on with the witnesses, sir. Okay?
Sorry, sir, just to answer your question, yes, I think there's a widely attributed quote to Mr. Thomas Jefferson that says that information is the currency of democracy. So yes, I'd be inclined to agree with your question/comment.
Okay. You know, I appreciate that, and I value greatly referencing that quote of which I've considered myself. The second question that I've asked all of the witnesses that have appeared on this study is the status quo acceptable? And I know you've all outlined that in your statements, but again, it's helpful in terms of compiling testimony for the report. So I'd ask the three of you here: is the status quo to Canada's access to information system acceptable? Mr. Beeby.
No, and it's in sharp decline, so it's getting worse every year.
Thank you. And Mr. Conte.
I reject the status quo.
Okay. And Mr. Jolly.
I think it's clear that our entire information ecosystem is something that needs to be, it needs valuable support right now. So time is of the essence.
Thank you very much. And now I know, as a member of Parliament, myself and my office, we filed several hundred access to information requests on a whole host of issues, from dealing with constituent casework to some of the big political issues of the day. But I'd find it valuable to hear, maybe just in short, and I'll go around the table again, just if you could point to maybe a couple of the extreme examples of delays or redactions that you've experienced in your time experiencing the access to information system firsthand. And this time I'll go in the reverse. So Mr. Jolly, if you could try to keep it in about 30 seconds, I know that's probably pretty tough, but just examples of either delays or redactions that have been the most egregious in your experience.
Oh, for sure. I mean, we've done a lot of work on RCMP and trying to uncover police malfeasance and accountability. We've run different campaigns, of course, over time, where we've documented and asked for our members to provide a series of information, and I'd be happy to share that with the committee for its review and consideration.
That would be great. And if you have examples of, the number of years or whatever the case, that'd be fantastic as well. Mr. Conte, the same question. If you have any examples that you could share with the committee so we can really understand in about 30 seconds. I know that's probably tough, but.
I mean, in one of the articles that I submitted to you, I reported on a presentation with LAC, Library Archives Canada, and Office of Information Commissioners, a forum that they presented online about a year ago, where they reported that 80% of top secret, 80% of the information that is classified as top secret in LAC vaults are not top secret. But I mean, what I think is even, this symbolizes, I think, the frictional nature between CSIS, who is doing those redactions and maintaining that censorship, and the relationship between both LAC and the Office of the Information Commissioner. So I would invite you to speak to those representatives to get more clarity on that.
And I appreciate that. In my last 30 seconds, Mr. Beeby.
Well, to be brief, I've had so many disappointments, but, for example, I've asked for briefing notes for Prime Minister Harper and received them 7 years later after a new government and 3 elections. So how am I supposed to hold government to account when I'm become essentially an historian rather than a journalist?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much to the witnesses for your information.
Thank you, Mr. Keurig. Next, we'll go to Ms. Hepner. It looks like some of the technical challenges may have been corrected with Mr. Tromp, but we're just going to. You're in the bullpen right now, Mr. Tromp. So we're gonna have a pitching change in a few minutes. Ms. Hepner, you're next for 6 minutes, please.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a pleasure for me to be here today with journalists. I was a journalist for over 20 years. And I was able to see firsthand the changes over time.
Heard from witnesses at this committee previously is that there's actually more information available than any time previous in our history. And I'm wondering what sort of challenges and also what sort of benefits journalists are seeing from that change, that there's actually more information available now than ever before. And so I'll ask all of you, but maybe Mr. Beeby, you can start.
Thank you for the question. All information is not created equal, so a lot of information is pushed out there that has really little relevance to public affairs and public discourse. So it's a bit of a game to say that more and more information is available. Is it useful information? Is it information that helps inquire into decision making at the highest levels? And I would say it's really that core information that we're not seeing more of. In fact, I think we're seeing less and less of it. So, I really have to push back against this argument that, we're awash in information. Not all information is created equal, and much of it is not useful to the profession of journalism.
Thank you, Mr. Conte. Do you have something else to add?
It depends what kind of information you're talking about. There's more misinformation available than ever before as well. So, if we're talking about government information, it's very easy to manipulate what is credible, legitimate information and what is not.
Mr. Jolly, do you have anything to add to the observation by previous witnesses to this committee that more information is available from government than ever before?
Yeah, I think that I'd definitely push back on that in a similar fashion to that emphasized by Mr. Beeby and Mr. Conte here. I don't think we can equate volume with quality. I think that's an unfair comparing apples to oranges in this case. I think what we need to look at is of course the quality of information and information that reveals things about how Canada operates, how decisions of the federal government are made, and information that promotes transparency and accountability, not just spin doctoring and talking points and sanitized notes.
So picking up on that quality versus quantity, Mr. Beeby, you brought up that the percentage of journalists filing access to information requests is a lot lower than it has been previously. But I'm wondering if the percentage is what's changed and not the number of journalists. I don't know the answer to that. But we know that there's a huge volume of people, not just journalists. It's been ballooning, the number of people filing access to information requests. Do you think journalists have stopped, or do you think they're just being overwhelmed by other people filing requests?
It's hard to say because Treasury Board keeps such poor statistics. They do an annual report, but it's quite unreliable. They don't use scientific methods to gather their data, so it's a lot of guesswork. But on that point, it's interesting that there are more requests than ever before. The number goes up. It's a huge number now. It's well over it's almost to 200,000. If proactive disclosure of government information was being so helpful in this process, why are so many people asking more and more often for records under access to information? The reverse should happen. If we're being proactively making useful information available, then the number should go down, but it goes up. And I think that's very telling because, you know, the proactive release of information is really just material that has very little relevance, and that's why I think the numbers are going up so enormously.
Let me read a quote from a previous witness, Mr. Wernick. He asked us to remember that a request is not a request is not a request. Some are extremely focused and they know what they're looking for, and it's relatively easy to decide whether it should go out or not go out to apply to the screens. But there are also requests formed particularly by brokers and resellers. So he's talking about people who access information in order to sell to someone else. They're looking for information so they can resell it. Picking up the quote, which are kind of like the trawl nets that go over the ocean floor, scooping up everything that lives. I used to get a monthly request when I was deputy minister for every note I had ever sent to the minister that month. And so I'm wondering if requests like these are bogging down the system, that maybe they're not from journalists, they're not specific, it's not people looking for information that they particularly want, they're just throwing out a trawling net to see if they can find anything that sticks.
In about 30 seconds.
Mr. Beeby, why don't you answer it?
I would say those data brokers have every right to request information just like all of us. And you're forgetting that these people are doing a service, they're selling a service to Canadians who find this information useful, and the government isn't supplying it to them. So the data brokers are, and so that's useful. And data brokers pay taxes, and so, you know, I don't think it's fair to single out a category of user as somehow gumming up the system. I think, you know, if there's any solution to that, then government should just make available the data that these brokers are after, and everyone will be happier. But in the meantime, that's not happening, and I think they have every right to request information like journalists and anyone else.
Thank you, Mr. Beeby. Mr. Villemure.